this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Build-A-Droid BG-J38, the completed droid as part of the very last wave of the Legacy Collection with the Expanding Universe figures. So I reviewed every single one of those individually prior to this video, so if you haven't seen those yet, I would suggest you check them out. So today we'll be finally taking a look at exactly what this guy is all about, where he comes from, and just taking another closer look at him. So if you don't know anything about BG-J38, you're probably not alone in that, and this guy is a blink and you miss character. He shows up just briefly in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. I think he's in with AD-8, the torture droid, I suppose. He might be in the back manning some of the controls, or controlling some of the equipment that's used to torture some of the droids that we saw, like the power droid, for instance. I think that's the scene he's specifically in. Other than that, you'll never see him again in any of the other movies. But despite that, he's a character that was in really high demand at the time, and even still is to this day. Now that we've gotten a re-release of HK-47, I don't see why Hasbro could not get around to doing BG-J38 again in his own TVC card. I'm sure a lot of the original trilogy collectors, and myself included, would like to see him on a TVC card. I think he definitely is deserving of one. So perhaps we'll see that at some point in the future. Who knows though with Hasbro. But to this day, he still remains as probably the most expensive Build-A-Droid action figure that you can get out there. Before that, HK-47 was up there, but I imagine prices for him will probably come down a little bit since he's gotten that TVC release. And there's a few other ones out there that are kind of on the expensive side, but most of them are pretty reasonable, I would say. And the only way you're going to be able to complete this guy is if you get that final wave. And of course, the Space Trooper and Dark Trooper, for instance, are pretty easy to get hold of, relatively. But Shakti, Kruk, and Jason and Jaina Solo are much more difficult. So generally speaking, most people, if they have any parts of this guy, they're probably going to have the right leg here, and then maybe I'm trying to think what comes with the Dark Trooper. Maybe the legs, I guess. Those are probably the easiest parts to get hold of. But the head, the torso, and the left arm, and I'm pretty sure the right arm are the ones that come with the 4 harder to get action figures. So there's probably a lot of people out there that are just sitting on the legs in their collection and just waiting to get that complete. So we'll just go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. So I've mentioned in some of the other videos that I've showed him briefly in that he kind of reminds me of like a fly. And just from the scenes I have seen of him in Return of the Jedi, he kind of looks like a droid that this isn't his or the way he's supposed to be built. It's like he's just a bunch of random parts put together. So for being a Build-A-Droid, you would think he's his own single release action figure. He does have a lot of nice texture detail on him, and has a little bit of weathering here and there. A lot of nice sculpting work too. There's the eyes there, and then the mouth. Some buttons around him. I would assume this is supposed to be like his battery, or the battery compartment, or his power source. Something of that nature. And for his arms here, basically like pinchers. In the scene that I'm thinking of that he's in, we see him manning the controls like this in the background, and I would assume that's where basically the torture chamber is for the droids. As far as legs here, this is probably the more odd part about him. You can tell that this really doesn't look right. Like I said, I think he's just a bunch of random parts that were put together to make a complete droid in the movie. And considering if he's in the torture room they probably dismantle a lot of droids and then they'll just take random parts from random droids and make all new ones out of it. So this might be the case for him. Looks like it's a piston there or something like that. Silver detailing there. And his legs are very flimsy as well, so I would recommend being careful. If you have this guy, he doesn't really have a problem standing. Once you get him right, that is. But they are very flimsy legs, and unfortunately you can't really put a stand on him. He does have pegs, but they're not really deep. In terms of his articulation, he does have a swivel neck there, which goes a complete 360. I'm pretty sure I've seen some promo images of this guy where the head was like that. So that's an interesting thing. It does have swivel shoulders and swivel elbows, which do go past, well, they go about 90 degrees, but you can bend them back too. Nothing in the wrist, but that's okay. And he does have a swivel waist here, basically. And swivel hips, and hinge knees, basically. And they do go all the way up like that, and all the way back. And then swivel ankles, I suppose. Yeah. I don't think they're on a hinge. If they are, it's a very... Well, you know what? I think they are on a hinge, but I would, like I said, recommend being careful about that. We can at least pivot them side to side. Looks like there's a gray hinge there, as you can see. No weapons or accessories for this guy. Most of the build droids didn't really come with any accessories, other than maybe the HK droids. And we'll do a comparison real quick, and with some other droids. Here he is. Another completed Build-A-Droid, Death Star droid. I think his official name's like MB-RA7 or something like that. They look pretty good together. And as you can see, even on a stand, he is still just slightly taller, I think. Or they're really close to the same height. They look pretty good together. And just to wrap this up here, I'll go ahead and bring out the entire wave. So we have the Space Trooper here. And we'll do the Dark Trooper beside him. So you can see a huge difference in the size of the droids. We'll put Jaina Solo up front here. Jason Solo. Put Crook back here. And Shakti. And there we have it. The complete final wave of the Legacy Collection. Arguably my favorite wave in the entirety of the Hasbro Star Wars line. Not too often we get entirely expanding universe waves from Hasbro Star Wars, so times we do, they usually knock it out of the park. Another example I can think of is in the Power of the Force days when we got about 8 action figures from mostly Heir of the Empire and Dark Empire. So would I recommend tracking down BG-J38? Well, he is very expensive, I'll say that. he definitely will run a person probably at least $100. If you find him for less than 100 and you really have to have him for your display, particularly a Jabba's Palace display, I would say then you should probably get him. Hoping that Hasbro will do a re-release of him. It's possible in the future, but is it really something we can count on? Unless it's something tied to Return of the Jedi, which we had a chance last year and it didn't happen, or there's something to do with Jabba's Palace, I don't see how they would re-release him anytime soon, at least. But he's a solid droid. Definitely probably one of the highlights in the Build-A-Droid line. And he's good for what he is. Overall, a great wave. Like I said, one of my favorites. And all 7 of these action figures are some of the favorites in my collection. I usually have them towards the front and center. But anyways, that concludes this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for plenty more reviews in the future. There will always be more to come. If you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate all your support. And check out the links in the description if you haven't done so already. As always, thanks for watching.